The missed base. The third baseman reached down for it, but the ball ricocheted off his glove and rolled halfway into the outfield. And suddenly, everything broke loose. The runner on third jumped up and raced home. He scored. Longwood's lead was now 5-4. Meanwhile, the runner who had been standing on second took off toward third. At first, he intended to stop there. I could see him beginning to slow down as he approached the bag. Then his third base coach started waving him home. "Come on, come on, come home!" The runner tried to accelerate again. As he reached third, his change of speed disrupted his stride. He stumbled slightly, and then I saw it. His foot passed completely over third base. He never touched it. I was right there. And that runner was my responsibility. Then I said to myself, I can't believe he missed the base. The third baseman was still chasing the loose baseball into the outfield when he turned his head to see whether the runner was going home. When he looked back, he saw the same thing I had seen. The runner had missed third. Then the third baseman looked directly at me. Our eyes locked. There wasn't a conversation. There didn't need to be. I knew what he had seen, and he knew I had been standing there, watching the play. I shifted my attention back toward the runner as he continued toward home. He crossed the plate. Brooktown erupted. Their players celebrated. Their coaches celebrated. The home crowd came alive because, as far as they knew, the game was tied 5-5. But I knew the play wasn't finished. Seeing a runner miss a base and immediately calling him out are two different things. Longwood still had to recognize what happened and make the appeal. So, I waited. The third baseman got the ball back to the pitcher and told him to appeal the last runner missing third. And right there, in the middle of Brooktown's celebration, my crisis began. The appeal was made. I turned toward home plate and announced my call. The last runner that crossed third base is out. He missed the base. The game is over. Brooktown's celebration disappeared almost instantly. The tying run didn't count. Longwood had finally beaten Brooktown, and I had made the call that ended the game. Instantly, I became famous in Brooktown. Unfortunately, it wasn't the kind of fame that came with people asking for autographs. The Brooktown coach came running onto the field toward me. His face was filled with disbelief, and his voice carried the frustration of a man who had just watched what he thought was a game-tying run disappear.
He didn't miss the base. Are you sure he missed the base? Because he said he didn't miss it, and I know he's not lying.
I understood why he was upset, so I made sure that his emotion didn't become mine. I looked at him and calmly explained what I had seen. Coach, I was watching the runner when he stumbled at third and stepped over the bag. What I didn't realize was how clearly the fans could hear me. Once they heard my explanation, they became livid. Voices came raining down from the stands. People shouted all kinds of absurdities at me, each person apparently convinced that yelling louder might somehow change what had happened. The coach then asked me to consult with my partner.
Will you ask the other umpire if he saw something different?
I agreed. Okay, I'll ask him. I walked toward home plate, where Nuncy was waiting. Mr. Rembert, did you see anything different from what I saw? Nuncy looked at me before answering.
Well, since the catcher was trying to pick off the runner at third, you were already in position to make that call. When the other runner came from second to third, you had nobody else to watch but him.
Then he explained his own responsibility.
You were much closer than I was, and I had to watch the other runner and make sure that his foot touched home plate.
That was the information I needed. Nuncy hadn't seen anything that gave me a reason to change my ruling. I turned back toward the coach. The crowd was still shouting. The coach was waiting. I gave him my answer. "He's out. That's the ball game." The call stood, and so did I. As I started walking off the field, the game may have been finished, but those Brooktown fans were nowhere near finished with me. They yelled. They hollered. And somewhere in the middle of all that commotion, they tried to guess what my name was. The only problem was that they couldn't figure it out for nothing. But that didn't stop them. I even heard someone accusing my mother of something, and they still continued to guess. And they were wrong. Another voice yelled something else. Still wrong. The farther I walked, the funnier that part became to me. It reminded me of Rumpelstiltskin. It was as if the entire Brooktown crowd had decided that if they could just guess my correct name, they might somehow win the game after all. Inside, I wanted to turn around and tell them, "Just stop. You're never going to guess my right name, so stop." But I didn't. I kept walking, because underneath the humor was something far more important. I stood by my call because it was the right call. What the crisis taught me. One thing umpiring has taught me is that whenever a call goes against what someone wants, their first reaction may be to blame the person who made it. "That was a terrible call. You made a mistake." I've heard variations of those words many times. But an umpire cannot make decisions based on which dugout will celebrate afterward. It didn't matter to me which team wins or loses. My responsibility is to the game. If the runner is safe, I call him safe. If he's out, I call him out. And if a runner misses a base and the defensive team properly appeals it, I have to make that call too, even if making it turns an entire town against me. Standing firm in what you do and what you say builds character. It doesn't always build friends. I learned that lesson in Brooktown. Still, when I left the field that night, I didn't feel as though everything was settled. The game was over, but the emotions surrounding it weren't. People in that town were angry because they believed I had cheated their boys out of a victory. They hadn't stood where I stood. They hadn't seen what I saw. All they knew was that their team appeared to have tied the game, and then one umpire took that run away. I understood their disappointment. But understanding someone's disappointment doesn't require me to change the truth. That realization stayed with me long after I left the ballpark. So did something else. I began thinking about crises differently. Crises come. Crises go. But what we learn while going through them can remain with us for the rest of our lives. Sometimes the very thing we're trying our hardest to avoid is the thing we need to go through in order to grow. A crisis can feel like the worst thing happening in your life while you're standing in the middle of it. You may become angry. You may become frustrated. You may wonder why you're the one who has to deal with it. But I've learned that sometimes we have to travel through an uncomfortable place to reach the place where God needs us to be. That doesn't mean every crisis will make sense immediately. Some lessons take time. But if the only thing I learned from a crisis is how angry I became, then I haven't learned enough. If all I remember is my frustration, I haven't learned enough. And if my only response afterward is relief that I survived it, then I may have missed the reason the experience mattered. If I don't learn how to handle the crisis, I may find myself facing the same lesson again in a different situation. That July night taught me something I could carry far beyond a baseball field. I couldn't control Brooktown's coach. I couldn't control the players. I couldn't control the fans. I couldn't control what they called me as I walked away from the field, especially since none of them could get my name right anyway. But I could control myself. I could remain calm. I could listen to the coach. I could consult my partner. And after doing all of that, I could stand behind the truth of what I had seen. That is where the armor of God became more than something I prayed about before a baseball game. It became something I had to live. Integrity isn't proven when everybody agrees with you. Sometimes integrity is proven when you're standing almost by yourself. Everybody around you is telling you that you're wrong, and you still have the courage to stand by what you know is right. I walked into Brooktown that night as one of 2 umpires assigned to work a baseball game. I walked away having learned another lesson about myself. Even though the crowd didn't know my name, I knew who I was. I knew what I had seen. I knew why I made the call. And most importantly, when the crisis came, I didn't allow the pressure surrounding me to change the man standing inside that umpire's uniform. That's what integrity is. It isn't about making everybody happy. It's about being able to walk away knowing that when the moment came, you did what was right. That night, Longwood won the baseball game. But the lesson I carried away from Brooktown was worth much more than the final score. Sometimes God doesn't remove the crisis from your path. Sometimes He allows you to walk straight through it so that when you come out on the other side, you understand something about your faith, your character, and yourself that you could never have learned by going around it. And that is why, whenever I think about that night in Brooktown, I don't remember only the missed base, the angry coach, or the fans shouting from the stands. I remember the lessons I learned.